The gunshot echoed through the canyon as Caleb Xavier pulled the trigger, scaring off the coyote that had been eyeing his cattle for the past hour. It was September 1875, and the Texas sun was relentless, beating down on his sweat-drenched shirt as he guided his horse back toward the modest ranch he'd built with his own two hands. Little did he know that this ordinary day would change his life forever. Caleb had left Missouri 3 years prior, after the death of his parents in a cholera outbreak. At 27, he'd purchased a parcel of land in the Texas Hill Country, determined to build something of his own, away from the memories that haunted him. The land was unforgiving, but he'd managed to develop a small but respectable cattle operation. His nearest neighbors were 5 miles in either direction, which suited his solitary nature just fine. As Caleb's ranch house came into view, something unusual caught his eye. A small bundle sat on his front porch, looking out of place against the weathered wood. He slowed his horse, hand instinctively moving to the revolver at his hip. Raiders weren't common in these parts, but a man alone couldn't be too careful. Drawing closer, he noticed the bundle was moving slightly. He dismounted, approaching cautiously, spurs jingling with each step. When he reached the porch, his breath caught in his throat. There, nestled in a woven basket lined with a faded blue blanket, was a baby. "What in tarnation?" he muttered, crouching down to get a better look. The infant couldn't have been more than a few months old, with a tuft of dark hair and wide, curious eyes that stared up at him without fear. A folded piece of paper was tucked beside the child. With hesitant fingers, Caleb unfolded the note and read the hastily scrawled message. "Her name is Lily. I cannot care for her. Please find her a good home." No signature, no explanation beyond those few words. Caleb looked around, scanning the horizon for any sign of whoever had left the child, but saw only the empty landscape shimmering in the afternoon heat. "Hello?" he called out, his voice carried away by the wind. "Is anyone there?" Silence answered him. The baby Lily began to fuss, tiny fists waving in the air. Caleb ran a hand through his hair, completely at a loss. He knew nothing about babies. The nearest town, Cottonwood Springs, was a half-day's ride away. Night would fall before he could get there. "Well, little one," he said, awkwardly lifting the basket, "I reckon you're staying here tonight." Inside his modest cabin, Caleb placed the basket on his kitchen table and stared at the child, who had quieted and was now watching him with those unnerving, intelligent eyes. "Are you hungry?" he asked, feeling foolish for talking to a baby. What do babies eat anyway? He rummaged through his supplies, finding some cow's milk he'd collected that morning. He warmed it slightly and, after fashioning a makeshift bottle from a clean cloth and a small medicine bottle, managed to feed the infant. To his relief, she drank eagerly. "That's it," he encouraged, surprised by the surge of satisfaction he felt when she finished the milk. "You were hungry, weren't you?" As the evening progressed, Caleb made a temporary bed for Lily from a drawer lined with his softest shirts. He placed it beside his own bed, where he could hear if she cried in the night. As he prepared for sleep, he couldn't help wondering who had left this child on his doorstep and why. "First thing tomorrow," he promised the sleeping infant, "we're heading to town to find you a proper home." But sleep didn't come easily to Caleb that night. Each time Lily stirred, he was instantly awake, checking to ensure she was safe. By dawn, he had made a decision. He would take her to Cottonwood Springs and speak with the sheriff. Surely someone would know of a family looking to take in a child. The morning brought new challenges. Caleb fashioned a sling from a spare shirt to carry Lily against his chest, securing her there as he saddled his horse, Rusty. He packed what supplies he thought they might need: milk, clean cloths, the blanket from the basket, and set out for town. The journey was slower than usual, Caleb riding carefully to avoid jostling the baby. Lily seemed content, occasionally making soft cooing sounds or grabbing at his shirt with tiny fingers, By the time Cottonwood Springs appeared on the horizon, Caleb found himself talking to her, pointing out landmarks and wildlife as if she could understand. "See there? That's a red-tailed hawk," he explained as a large bird soared overhead. "And those flowers are bluebonnets. Come spring, these hills are covered with them." The town was bustling when they arrived, wagons and horses lining the main street. Caleb received curious glances as he dismounted, the baby still secured to his chest. He made his way directly to the sheriff's office, where Sheriff Miller looked up from his desk with raised eyebrows. "Caleb Xavier," the sheriff greeted him. "That's not something I expected to see. You robbing cradles now?" Caleb explained the situation while Lily slept peacefully against him. The sheriff listened, stroking his gray-flecked mustache thoughtfully. "Strange business," Sheriff Miller said when Caleb finished. "You say there was no sign of whoever left her?" "None," Caleb confirmed. "Just vanished like morning mist." The sheriff shook his head. "Well, we've got no reports of missing babies. That's for certain. The widow Peterson might be able to take her in temporarily. She's helped with orphans before." Relief flooded through Caleb. "That would be best. I don't know the first thing about caring for a child." Sheriff Miller stood, reaching for his hat. "Let's go see her now. She lives just down the street." As they walked, Caleb felt an unexpected twinge of reluctance. In just one day, he'd grown accustomed to Lily's weight against his chest, her sweet baby smell, her tiny hands grasping his finger. He reminded himself that this was for the best. A child needed a proper family, not a lonely rancher who barely knew how to interact with other adults, let alone raise a baby. Mrs. Peterson, a kind-faced woman in her 50s, welcomed them into her tidy home. She cooed over Lily, expertly taking her from Caleb's arms. "Poor little dear," she said, rocking the baby gently, "left all alone in the world." "Can you care for her while we try to find her family?" Sheriff Miller asked. Mrs. Peterson nodded. "Of course. I've got everything needed for a baby. My daughter left some things when she visited with my grandson last month." Caleb should have felt relieved as he handed over the basket and supplies he'd brought. Instead, he felt strangely hollow as he watched Mrs. Peterson carry Lily into another room to change her. "You did the right thing," Sheriff Miller assured him, clapping him on the shoulder. "I'll ask around, see if anyone knows anything about a mother who might have been in trouble." Caleb nodded, unable to articulate the confusion he felt. "I should get back to the ranch. The cattle need tending." He left Mrs. Peterson's house feeling lighter physically, but heavier in spirit. As he rode out of town, he told himself it was foolish to become attached to a child he'd known for barely a day. Yet he couldn't shake the memory of those trusting eyes looking up at him, tiny hands clutching his shirt. The ranch seemed eerily quiet when he returned. Caleb went through his usual routines mechanically, checking on the cattle, repairing a section of fence, preparing a simple dinner for himself. The empty drawer beside his bed caught his eye as he prepared for sleep, and he closed it firmly, trying to push away thoughts of the baby he'd left behind. 3 days passed in this manner. Caleb worked from dawn until dusk, exhausting himself physically in an attempt to quiet his mind. On the 4th day, as he was returning from checking the western boundary of his property, he spotted a horse and rider approaching his ranch house. Instinctively wary, he urged Rusty to greater speed, arriving at the house just as the stranger dismounted. It was a woman, he realized with surprise. She wore a simple blue dress, her dark hair partially covered by a bonnet. She turned at the sound of his approach, and Caleb was struck by the desperation in her eyes. "Are you the owner of this ranch?" she called out, her voice carrying a hint of an accent he couldn't quite place. Caleb dismounted, keeping a cautious distance. "I am. Caleb Xavier. What business do you have here, madam?" The woman took a step forward, hands clasped tightly before her. "My name is Zara Perez. She faltered, then squared her shoulders. "I'm looking for a baby. A little girl who may have been left here several days ago. Caleb's heart pounded against his ribs. You're Lily's mother? Relief and something like fear crossed the woman's face. She's alive? She's here. Please, I need to see her. She's not here, Caleb said, studying the woman carefully. She had the same dark hair as Lily, the same olive complexion. She's being cared for in town. Are you the one who left her on my porch? Zara shook her head frantically. No, I would never abandon my daughter. She was taken from me. Tears filled her eyes. Please, if you know where she is. Taken. By whom? Caleb asked, his protective instincts flaring. And how did you know to look here? The woman's shoulders slumped. It's a long story. One I'd rather not tell standing in the sun. Please, I've been searching for days. I'm exhausted and worried sick about my baby. Despite his caution, Caleb couldn't deny the genuine anguish in her eyes. Come inside. You can rest and tell me what happened. Then we'll decide what to do about Lily. Inside his cabin, Caleb offered Zara water and the chair at his small table. She drank gratefully, her hands trembling slightly. Now that he could see her clearly, he noticed the dark circles under her eyes, the dust on her dress. She had indeed been traveling hard. Now, he said, leaning against the kitchen counter. Tell me how your daughter ended up on my porch. Zara took a deep breath. My husband died 6 months ago, shortly after Lily was born. He worked for a cattle baron, Mr. Blackwell, north of here. After his death, I continued living in the workers' quarters, taking in laundry to support myself and Lily. Her voice hardened. Mr. Blackwell's wife couldn't have children. She took an interest in Lily, always wanting to hold her, bringing her gifts. A cold feeling settled in Caleb's stomach. Go on? 3 days ago, I returned from delivering laundry to find my home ransacked and Lily gone. The Blackwells' housekeeper told me in secret that Mrs. Blackwell had arranged for Lily to be taken, claiming that a poor Mexican widow couldn't properly care for such a beautiful child. That's kidnapping, Caleb said, anger rising within him. Zara nodded. The housekeeper overheard the man they hired say something about leaving the baby with a rancher to the south, one who lived alone. I've been riding from ranch to ranch since then, praying I would find her. Caleb processed this information, studying Zara's face for any sign of deception. He found none, only the raw desperation of a mother searching for her child. The note said you couldn't care for her, he said. A lie, Zara replied fiercely. I would die before willingly giving up my daughter. Decision made, Caleb straightened. Mrs. Perez, I believe you. Lily is safe in town with a respectable widow who's caring for her temporarily. We can retrieve her tomorrow morning. Relief transformed Zara's face, making her beauty suddenly apparent despite her exhaustion. Thank you. Thank you so much. Can we go now? Please. I need to hold my baby. Caleb glanced out the window at the setting sun. It's nearly dark. The journey would be dangerous, especially with you as tired as you are. Rest tonight, and we'll leave at first light. Though clearly reluctant to wait, Zara nodded in acceptance. Caleb prepared a simple meal, which she ate hungrily. He offered her his bed for the night, planning to sleep on a bedroll near the fireplace. As he arranged his makeshift bed, questions nagged at him. These Blackwells, will they come looking for Lily? Zara's expression darkened. I don't know. They're powerful, with connections to local authorities. That's why I didn't go to the sheriff. I couldn't prove anything, and they could easily claim I was unfit as a mother. We'll need to be careful then, Caleb said. Get some sleep. Tomorrow you'll be reunited with your daughter. Despite his exhaustion, sleep eluded Caleb that night. He thought about the small family that had been torn apart by greed and entitlement. He thought about Lily's trusting eyes and the same fierce determination he'd seen in her mother's gaze. Something protective stirred within him, a feeling he hadn't experienced since losing his own family. Dawn had barely broken when they set out for Cottonwood Springs, Zara riding her own horse alongside Caleb. She was quiet during the journey, her thoughts clearly focused on the reunion ahead. Caleb found himself stealing glances at her profile, admiring the strength evident in her posture despite all she'd endured. When they reached town, they went directly to Mrs. Peterson's house. The widow looked confused when she opened the door to find Caleb with a strange woman. "Mrs. Peterson," Caleb said, "this is Zara Perez. She's Lily's mother." The older woman's eyes widened in surprise, then narrowed with suspicion. "Is that so? And how do I know that's true?" "Where is she?" Zara asked, her voice breaking. "Please, I need to see my daughter." Something in her desperation must have convinced Mrs. Peterson, for her expression softened. "She's sleeping. Come in, quietly now." They followed her to a small bedroom where Lily lay in a cradle, peaceful in sleep. Zara rushed to her side, tears streaming down her face as she gently touched her daughter's cheek. "Mi corazón," she whispered. "My Lily." As if sensing her mother's presence, the baby opened her eyes. For a moment, she simply stared up at Zara. Then her face broke into a toothless smile of recognition, arms reaching upward. Zara lifted her with practiced ease, holding her close and murmuring endearments in a mixture of English and Spanish. The reunion brought tears to Mrs. Peterson's eyes and a lump to Caleb's throat. The connection between mother and child was undeniable. Any lingering doubts he might have had about Zara's story vanished as he watched them together. "She's been a good baby," Mrs. Peterson said. "Hardly any trouble at all." "Thank you for caring for her," Zara said sincerely. "I don't know how to repay your kindness." "No need for that," the widow replied. "But I'd like to hear how she came to be separated from you." While Lily nursed, Zara recounted her story again. Mrs. Peterson's expression grew increasingly indignant as she listened. "The nerve of some people," she said when Zara finished. "Thinking they can just take a child because they have money and power. You should speak with Sheriff Miller." Zara exchanged a worried glance with Caleb. "I'm afraid of what might happen if the Blackwells learn I've found Lily. They could claim I'm unfit. Or worse." "She's right to be cautious," Caleb added. "We don't know how far their influence extends." Mrs. Peterson frowned. "So what will you do? You can't spend your life running." The question hung in the air. Caleb hadn't thought beyond reuniting Zara with her daughter, but now practical concerns asserted themselves. Where would they go? How would they stay safe? "You could come back to my ranch," he found himself saying. "It's isolated enough that no one would think to look there. At least, not right away. It would give us time to figure out a more permanent solution." Zara looked at him in surprise. "You would do that for us? You barely know me?" Caleb shifted uncomfortably under her gaze. "I found Lily. That makes me responsible for her welfare in a way. And yours, by extension." "That's settled then," Mrs. Peterson said decisively. "You'll stay with Mr. Xavier until this matter is resolved. I'll gather Lily's things." As the widow bustled about collecting baby supplies, Zara approached Caleb. Lily was nestled against her shoulder, contentedly sucking her thumb. "Thank you," she said softly, "for finding my daughter, for believing me, for offering us sanctuary. I don't know many men who would do such things for strangers." Caleb felt warmth creep into his cheeks. "It's nothing. Just doing what's right." They left town with Lily securely fastened to Zara's chest in a sling Mrs. Peterson had provided, along with supplies to last several days. Caleb remained vigilant as they traveled, watchful for any sign of pursuit. By mid-afternoon, they reached his ranch without incident. "It's not much," he said as he helped Zara dismount, suddenly aware of his humble dwelling through her eyes. "But it's solid and warm. It's perfect," she assured him, looking around at the small homestead with appreciation. a place where Lily can be safe. That evening, Caleb felt a strange contentment as he prepared dinner while Zara tended to Lily nearby. The cabin that had seemed so empty just days before now felt alive with the baby's coos and Zara's gentle voice singing a Spanish lullaby. As they ate, Caleb learned more about Zara's life. She had come to America from Mexico as a child with her parents, who had worked on various ranches. She had met her husband, Manuel, while working in the kitchen of a large estate. They had married young and dreamed of saving enough to buy their own small piece of land someday. Manuel was a good man, she said, her eyes distant with memory. He would have been a wonderful father to Lily. When he died of fever, I thought my heart would never heal. But I had to be strong for our daughter. You are strong, Caleb said. Not everyone would have the courage to search for their child against such odds. Zara smiled at him, the first genuine smile he'd seen from her. And what about you, Mr. Xavier? How did you come to be living alone on this ranch? Caleb rarely spoke of his past, but something about Zara's direct gaze made him want to share. He told her about losing his parents, about his decision to start fresh in Texas, about the solitary life he'd built for himself. It sounds lonely, she observed when he finished. I never thought so, he replied honestly. Until recently. Their eyes met across the table, and something unspoken passed between them. A recognition of shared loss and unexpected connection. The following days established a routine. Caleb tended to the ranch work while Zara kept house and cared for Lily. In the evenings, they would sit on the porch, watching the sunset while Lily played on a blanket at their feet. Caleb found himself looking forward to these quiet moments, to Zara's insightful observations and gentle humor. A week passed, then another. There was no sign of the Blackwells or any searchers. Gradually, the tension eased from Zara's shoulders. She began to explore the ranch, helping Caleb with simple tasks when Lily was napping. He taught her to ride better, showed her how to check the cattle, explained his plans for expanding the herd. You've done so much with this land, she said one afternoon as they rode along the creek that marked his eastern boundary. Manuel would have admired your determination. I wish I could have met him, Caleb said sincerely. Zara turned in her saddle to look at him. So do I. He would have liked you. The words felt significant, though Caleb couldn't have explained why. That evening, as Zara prepared dinner, he found himself watching her move about the kitchen, her dark hair catching the lamplight, Lily balanced expertly on her hip. Something warm and unfamiliar bloomed in his chest. The next morning, Caleb rode into town for supplies and to inquire discreetly whether anyone had been asking about a woman and baby. Sheriff Miller reported no such inquiries, which came as a relief. How's that little one doing? The sheriff asked. Did you find out where she came from? Caleb chose his words carefully. She's with family now. That's all that matters. The sheriff studied him thoughtfully. You seem different, Caleb. Less solitary, somehow. Caleb merely shrugged, loading his purchases onto his horse. He wasn't ready to examine the changes in himself too closely, let alone discuss them with others. When he returned to the ranch, he found Zara in the garden patch behind the cabin, Lily napping in a basket in the shade. She had pulled weeds and tilled the soil, preparing it for fall planting. I hope you don't mind, she said, wiping dirt from her hands. I noticed the garden needed attention. Mind? It looks better than it ever has, Caleb said, genuinely impressed. I'm not much of a gardener. Zara smiled. My mother taught me. With good soil like this, you could grow plenty of vegetables. It would save you trips to town for supplies. Our supplies, Caleb corrected without thinking. When she looked at him in surprise, he added hastily, For as long as you're here, I mean. That evening, after Lily was asleep in the drawer bed that had been restored to its place beside Caleb's bed, They sat by the fire. Outside, a autumn storm had blown in, rain pattering against the roof and windows. "It's been nearly a month," Zara said suddenly. "I should think about moving on, finding a place of our own." The words sent an unexpected pang through Caleb. "There's no need to rush," he said, trying to keep his voice casual. "Winter's coming. Traveling with a baby would be difficult." She looked at him, firelight reflecting in her dark eyes. "We can't impose on your kindness forever, Caleb." "It's not an imposition," he said, more forcefully than he had intended. "Having you and Lily here, it's been good. For us as well," she admitted softly. The air between them seemed charged suddenly. Caleb wanted to say more, to tell her how her presence had transformed his solitary existence into something rich and meaningful. But the words stuck in his throat, unfamiliar and frightening in their intensity. The moment passed when Lily cried out from the bedroom. Zara rose to check on her, and Caleb was left staring into the fire, confronting emotions he'd never expected to feel again. The next day brought clear skies and a visitor. Caleb was repairing the corral fence when he spotted a horse and rider approaching from the north. Instantly alert, he signaled to Zara, who was hanging laundry nearby. She quickly gathered Lily and retreated into the cabin. Caleb positioned himself between the approaching rider and the house, hand resting near his holstered revolver. As the visitor drew closer, Caleb recognized Tom Bennett, a rancher whose property lay about 10 miles north. "Morning, Xavier," Bennett called as he reined in his horse. "Been a while since I've seen you in these parts." "Bennett," Caleb acknowledged with a nod. "What brings you out this way?" The older man dismounted, stretching his back. "Just passing through. Was in Cottonwood Springs yesterday. Heard you'd taken in a woman and child. Thought I'd see if you needed anything." Caleb's guard went up immediately. "Who told you that?" Bennett raised an eyebrow at Caleb's tone. "No one specific. Town talk. You know how it is, man like you, lived alone for years, suddenly has company. People notice." Before Caleb could respond, the cabin door opened and Zara emerged, Lily in her arms. She approached cautiously, stopping at Caleb's side. "Mr. Bennett, this is Zara Perez and her daughter." "Lily," Caleb said formally. "They're staying with me for a time." Bennett touched the brim of his hat. "Madam, pleased to meet you." "Likewise," Zara replied, her expression carefully neutral. An awkward silence fell, broken when Bennett cleared his throat. "Well, I should be on my way. Just wanted to check in." "Oh, nearly forgot there's been talk of strangers asking questions in towns north of here, looking for a woman and baby. Thought you might want to know." Caleb felt Zara stiffen beside him. "What kind of strangers?" "Well-dressed fellow and a woman, offering a reward for information." Bennett's eyes flicked between them. "Didn't catch their names." "Thank you for the warning," Caleb said evenly. Bennett nodded, remounting his horse. "Take care, Xavier, madam." With a tip of his hat, he rode off. As soon as he was out of earshot, Zara turned to Caleb, her face pale. "They're looking for us, the Blackwells." "We don't know that for certain," Caleb tried to reassure her, though he felt the same unease. "Who else would it be?" Zara clutched Lily tighter. "They won't give up. They'll find us eventually." "I won't let them take Lily," Caleb promised. "We'll figure something out." That night, after Lily was asleep, they discussed their options in low voices at the kitchen table. "We could leave," Zara suggested. "Go south into Mexico. They wouldn't follow us there." Caleb frowned. "Running isn't the answer. You'd always be looking over your shoulder, never able to build a real life for Lily." "What choice do we have? They're rich and powerful. We can't fight them." "Maybe we can," Caleb said slowly. "Not with violence, but with the law. If we could prove they kidnapped Lily." "How? It would be my word against theirs." Caleb thought for a moment. The housekeeper who told you about their plan, would she testify? Maria? I don't know. She was risking her position just by warning me. It's worth trying, Caleb insisted. And there must be others who saw them with the man they hired to take Lily. People talk, especially about the wealthy. Zara considered this, absently tracing patterns on the wooden tabletop with her finger. Even if we found witnesses, going against the Blackwells would be dangerous. Some things are worth the risk, Caleb said, reaching across the table to cover her hand with his own. Lily deserves to grow up free from fear, with her mother. Zara turned her hand beneath his, their fingers interlacing. When did you become so invested in our future? The question hung between them, heavy with implications. Caleb knew he should withdraw his hand, maintain the respectful distance he'd kept all these weeks. Instead, he tightened his grip slightly. I think it happened the moment I found a basket on my porch, he admitted. Zara's eyes searched his face. Caleb. Whatever she might have said was interrupted by a sound outside horses approaching at speed. They both froze, then sprang into action. Caleb grabbed his rifle from above the fireplace while Zara rushed to the bedroom to get Lily. Out the back, Caleb directed, leading them through the kitchen to a small door that opened onto the garden. There's a path through the trees. Follow it to the creek and wait for me there. What about you? Zara asked, clutching a sleepy, confused Lily. I'll join you soon. Go now. As soon as they disappeared into the darkness, Caleb positioned himself by the front window, rifle ready. 3 riders approached the cabin, lanterns casting eerie shadows across the yard. They stopped a cautious distance from the house. Caleb Xavier, a deep voice called. We know you're in there. Come out peacefully. We just want to talk. Caleb remained silent, watching as one of the men dismounted tall, expensively dressed, with an air of authority. This, he guessed, was Blackwell. Mr. Xavier, the man continued, I believe you're harboring a Mexican woman and an infant. That child was legally promised to us for adoption. The mother changed her mind and fled with our property. Anger surged through Caleb at hearing Lily referred to as property. He opened the door but remained inside, rifle visible. I don't know what you're talking about, he called back. I live alone. Blackwell's face hardened. We have reliable information that the woman and child are here. Don't make this difficult. There's a substantial reward for their return. Even if I did know something, I wouldn't be interested in your blood money, Caleb replied. Now get off my land. The 2 men still mounted shifted uneasily, but Blackwell stood his ground. This isn't over, Xavier. That child belongs with us, with a proper family that can provide for her. Not with a penniless Mexican or a solitary rancher. A child belongs with her mother, Caleb said firmly. Now leave before I consider you trespassers and act accordingly. For a tense moment, Blackwell stared at the cabin, clearly calculating his options. Finally, he remounted his horse. We'll be back, with the sheriff and a court order. You've chosen the wrong side, Xavier. Caleb watched them ride away, waiting until their lanterns were distant specks before he hurried out the back to find Zara and Lily. He found them huddled by the creek, Zara shivering in the night air. They're gone for now, he told her, placing his coat around her shoulders. But they'll be back, probably with some fabricated legal document. What do we do? Zara asked, her voice steady despite her obvious fear. Caleb made a quick decision. We need to get to Sheriff Miller before they do. Tell him the truth. Are you willing to fight for Lily in court if necessary? With every breath in my body, she declared. Then we leave now, tonight. We can reach town by dawn if we ride hard. They returned to the cabin long enough to pack essentials and saddle the horses. Caleb fashioned a secure sling to keep Lily protected during the ride. Within an hour, they were on their way to Cottonwood Springs, traveling under a star-filled sky. They reached town just as the first light of dawn streaked the eastern horizon. Sheriff Miller was surprised to find them at his door so early, but invited them in to hear their story. Zara spoke with passionate conviction, describing how Lily had been taken from her and the Blackwells' attempt to reclaim her. "That's a serious accusation," the sheriff said when she finished. "The Blackwells are influential people." "It's the truth," Caleb insisted. "You've known me for 3 years, Sheriff. Have you ever known me to lie?" Miller studied them thoughtfully. "No, can't say that I have. But this is complicated. Without proof, it'll be your word against theirs." "There might be proof," Zara said. "Maria, their housekeeper, knew about the plan. And the man they hired to take Lily, someone must have seen him with the Blackwells." The sheriff nodded slowly. "I'll look into it. In the meantime, you should stay somewhere in town, not back at the ranch. They'll likely come looking for you there again." "They can stay with me," came a voice from the doorway. Mrs. Peterson stood there, market basket in hand. "I was just passing by and heard voices. I've got plenty of room, and no one would think to look for them at a respectable widow's house." Sheriff Miller smiled. "That's a fine offer, Mrs. Peterson. What do you say, Xavier?" Caleb looked to Zara, who nodded gratefully. "Thank you, Mrs. Peterson. We accept." They settled into Mrs. Peterson's comfortable home, Zara and Lily taking the spare bedroom, while Caleb slept on a pallet in the sitting room. For 3 days, they waited anxiously while Sheriff Miller made inquiries about the Blackwells and the kidnapping plot. On the 4th day, the sheriff arrived with news. "I spoke with several former employees of the Blackwell Ranch," he reported. 2 confirmed that Mrs. Blackwell had become obsessed with Lily and had made comments about how the child deserved better than a Mexican mother. 1 remembered a stranger arriving at the ranch the day before Lily disappeared. Hope flared in Zara's eyes. "Will they testify to this?" "They're willing, though scared," Miller confirmed. "I've also located the man they hired, a drifter named Jake Wilkins. He's in the next county, spending the Blackwells' money rather freely. I've sent word to have him detained." "So we have a case?" Caleb asked. "We do," the sheriff said. "But it won't be easy. The Blackwells arrived in town yesterday, demanding I help them recover their adopted daughter. They've got papers forged, I suspect, claiming Zara willingly gave up her child." Zara's face paled. "What happens now?" "There will be a hearing before the circuit judge next week. Until then, stay here, out of sight." The sheriff turned to leave, then paused. "One more thing. The Blackwells mentioned that Lily's mother was unmarried, suggesting she was morally unfit. It might help if you appeared to have a more traditional family situation." After the sheriff left, a heavy silence filled the room. Mrs. Peterson busied herself with Lily, leaving Caleb and Zara alone in the kitchen. "He's suggesting we pretend to be married," Zara said finally, her voice low. Caleb nodded, uncomfortable. "For the hearing, to strengthen your claim to Lily." "Would you do that?" she asked, looking up at him. "Pretend to be her father?" The question stirred something deep within Caleb, something he'd been trying to ignore for weeks. "It wouldn't be pretending, not entirely," he admitted. "I've come to care for Lily. And for you." Color rose in Zara's cheeks. "Caleb, I know it's not the right time," he said quickly, "with everything happening. But when this is over, when you and Lily are safe, I'd like to talk about possibilities." Zara's eyes softened. "So would I." The week passed in tense anticipation. Caleb ventured out occasionally, gathering information and supplies, while Zara remained hidden with Lily at Mrs. Peterson's house. They practiced their story that they had married quietly after Manuel's death, with Caleb adopting Lily as his own. On the morning of the hearing, Zara dressed carefully in a borrowed dress from Mrs. Peterson, arranging her hair neatly beneath a modest bonnet. Caleb wore his best shirt and had trimmed his beard. They looked, Mrs. Peterson declared, like a respectable family. The courthouse was crowded when they arrived. The Blackwells sat at the front, Mrs. Blackwell dabbing at her eyes with a lace handkerchief, while her husband spoke intently with a well-dressed lawyer. Caleb felt Zara's hand tighten on his arm as they walked past. Judge Harmon, a stern-looking man with spectacles, called the hearing to order. The Blackwells' lawyer spoke first, presenting a dramatic tale of a desperate Mexican servant who had agreed to give her child to the childless Blackwells, only to flee with the infant after receiving their charity. When it was their turn, Sheriff Miller presented the evidence he had gathered, including statements from the Blackwells' former employees. Jake Wilkins, the man hired to take Lily, had been brought in and reluctantly testified that he had been paid to relocate a baby to a place where no one would connect it to the Blackwells. Throughout the proceedings, Zara held Lily close, her head high, despite the whispers and stares. Caleb remained at her side, his presence a steady support. Finally, Zara was called to speak. She handed Lily to Caleb and approached the judge's bench, her voice clear and unwavering as she recounted how her daughter had been stolen from her. "I never agreed to give up my child," she concluded. "Lily is my heart, my family. Everything I do is for her future." "And you claim to be married to Mr. Xavier?" the judge asked, peering at her over his spectacles. Zara hesitated only briefly. "We have built a life together," she said, her gaze finding Caleb's across the room. "He has been a father to my daughter in every way that matters." The judge considered this, then turned to Caleb. "Mr. Xavier, do you support these claims? Are you prepared to take responsibility for this child as her father?" Caleb stood, Lily secure in his arms. "Your Honor, I found this child on my doorstep. I didn't know then that she had been stolen from her mother, but I knew she needed protection. That hasn't changed. I will protect Lily and her mother with my life if necessary." A murmur ran through the courtroom. Judge Harmon silenced it with a rap of his gavel, then sat in thought for several long moments. "This court," he finally pronounced, "finds the evidence of kidnapping compelling. The child Lily belongs with her natural mother, Zara Perez. Furthermore, I am issuing a restraining order against Mr. and Mrs. Blackwell, prohibiting them from approaching or contacting mother or child." Relief flooded through Caleb as Zara rushed to his side, tears streaming down her face as she embraced him and Lily together. The Blackwells departed in angry silence, their influence insufficient to overcome the truth. Outside the courthouse, Sheriff Miller congratulated them. "You stood up to powerful people and won. That takes courage." "We couldn't have done it without your help," Caleb acknowledged. As they walked back to Mrs. Peterson's house, Zara was quiet, lost in thought. That evening, after Lily was asleep, she found Caleb on the porch, watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. "We're free now," she said, sitting beside him. "Lily is safe." "Yes," he agreed. "You can build a life anywhere you choose." Zara turned to face him directly. "And where would you choose, Caleb Xavier?" He met her gaze steadily. "I have a ranch that needs a garden, a home that needs laughter, a man who wants a family. Are you asking us to stay?" Zara's voice was soft in the gathering darkness. "I'm asking for more than that," Caleb said, finding courage in the way she looked at him. "I'm asking if you might consider making our pretend marriage a real one, in time. Not out of necessity or convenience, but because these weeks with you and Lily have shown me what my life was missing." Zara's smile was radiant in the twilight. "I think," she said, reaching for his hand, "that Lily and I have already found our home." The next morning they bid farewell to Mrs. Peterson and Sheriff Miller, promising to return for visits. The ride back to the ranch was filled with a sense of possibility that Caleb had never expected to feel again. As they approached the cabin, Zara pointed to the garden patch she had begun to work before they fled. "I'm thinking tomatoes there, and beans along that fence, maybe corn at the back where they'll get full sun." "Whatever you want," Caleb said, enjoying the way she was already making plans. "It's your garden now." "Our garden," she corrected him. "Our home." The days that followed established new routines. Caleb tended the cattle while Zara transformed the cabin into a true home, adding touches of color and comfort. Together, they planted the garden, Lily watching from a blanket nearby, reaching for butterflies with delighted giggles. In the evenings, they would sit on the porch, talking about the future. Caleb spoke of expanding the herd, building a larger house someday. Zara shared her dreams of teaching Lily both English and Spanish, of preserving her Mexican heritage while embracing their American life. Autumn deepened into winter. On Christmas Eve, with snow dusting the hills around the ranch, Caleb asked Zara to marry him properly, presenting her with a simple silver ring he'd purchased on a trip to town. Their wedding, held in Cottonwood Springs the following spring, was a small affair attended by Mrs. Peterson, Sheriff Miller, and a few neighbors who had come to know and respect the unusual family. As the years passed, the ranch prospered. The garden expanded into a productive plot that supplied vegetables for their table and extras to sell in town. Lily grew into a spirited child with her mother's dark eyes and a determination that Caleb recognized as his own influence. On Lily's 5th birthday, Zara announced she was expecting their second child. Caleb's joy was boundless as he lifted his wife in celebration, Lily dancing around them in excitement at the prospect of a brother or sister. "Did you ever imagine this?" Zara asked that night as they lay together, her head on his chest. "That morning when you found a basket on your porch?" Caleb stroked her hair, thinking back to the solitary man he had been. "Never. I thought my life was set just me and the cattle until I grew too old to work the ranch. And now? Now I can't imagine any other life than this one," he said truthfully. "With you, with Lily, with the baby to come. This is home." 7 months later, their son was born, Mateo Xavier, named in honor of both Zara's Mexican heritage and the father who had chosen him through love rather than blood. As the children grew, so did the ranch. Caleb built the larger house he had promised, with rooms for each child and space for the family to gather. Lily, now 10, helped with the cattle alongside her father, showing a natural affinity for ranch work. 7-year-old Mateo preferred the garden, working beside his mother with patient hands. The Blackwells had moved away years earlier, their influence diminished after the scandal of the kidnapping attempt. Sometimes Zara would recall those fearful days with wonder at how differently life might have turned out. "If you hadn't found Lily," she said one evening as they sat on the porch of their new home, watching their children play in the yard. "If you hadn't believed me, hadn't stood by us." Caleb squeezed her hand. "Some things are meant to be, I think. That basket on my porch wasn't just chance." In the golden light of sunset, Zara leaned against her husband's shoulder, content in the knowledge that what had begun in desperation had transformed into a life of unexpected joy. The cowboy who had found a baby in a basket had found his heart as well, and the woman who came looking had found a home she never wanted to leave. And on quiet nights, when the children were asleep and the ranch was peaceful under starlight, Caleb would sometimes think of that solitary man he had once been, and marvel at how a single basket on his porch had changed everything, leading him to a love and family he had never dared to dream possible.